Trump's main argument has been in the last months, I will stop them from having a nuclear weapon. Of course, anyone that knows the history of this knows that this is Orwell to the nth power. By that, I mean such bizarre propaganda, you don't quite even know where to start. The reason is that the Iranians have not pursued a nuclear weapon. Our own intelligence agencies have said that repeatedly. What they have pursued, though, is a treaty with the UN Security Council to confirm that, to put them under strict monitoring under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but in return for ending the U.S. economic warfare on Iran. What Iran has wanted for 15 years is you supervise us, you control us, fine, but lift your sanctions. Let us breathe. Let us have a normal economy. Let us trade. And President Obama, and by the way, one other thing, let us have our own money back, because the United States has confiscated tens of billions of dollars of Iran's money. Iran's money, not our money. Because we do that as an empire. We freeze the money of other countries. We sometimes just overtly take it and use it for something else. It's rather obnoxious to my point of view, and rather self-defeating in the long term for the United States to have the reputation that it just steals other people's fiscal and financial resources. But we did that with Iran. So what Iran has wanted is diplomacy. And I come back again. They're nice people. They're diplomats. And I sometimes tell them, you don't even know who you're dealing with here. How nasty this is. How difficult this is. No. We want an agreement, Professor Sachs. Do you know who we might speak to about negotiations and so forth? Very civilized, very nice people. In 2015, such an agreement was reached. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. It was reached not only with the United States, but with Britain, with France, with Russia, with China, and with Germany. The 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany, called 5+1. Then it went to the UN Security Council, where it was unanimously backed. Then came the Zionist lobby in the United States. Oh, no, you can't have an agreement with Iran. They're the evil empire. You can't do this. And so when Trump was elected in the first term, he ripped up the JCPOA. This is the approach, that you don't want them to have a nuclear weapon when you had the control? No, this is the opposite. This is, we need to change the regime because they humiliated the United States by escaping from our empire. We tried to defeat them in many ways, but they stood up to it. We need to defeat them. There's an Israeli version, which is not exactly the same. And the Israeli version is, we need to have absolute control over the Middle East so that we can pursue our greater Israel agenda. This is not exactly the U.S. cause, but there are people in the U.S. that are the backers of that distinct cause. That's not Israel saying you escape from the American empire. That's Israel saying we control almost all of the Middle East militarily, but Iran we don't yet control. So that's the last big prize. And that's the other part of this agenda right now, and why Israel is even more against the off-ramp than the United States. Trump is against the off-ramp because he can't declare victory, because he would lose face, because it would be, he'd face pressure groups, because there are, we have the Israel or the Zionist lobby, I would call it, in the United States. For Israel, the issue is somewhat distinct, but Israel's main issue is that it wants complete military dominance of West Asia and the Middle East and even into the Horn of Africa and North Africa. And it almost has that. Not that it can easily control all of the territory, no, by no means, but it is able to act with impunity. It's able to invade Lebanon. It's able to occupy Syria. It's able to overthrow other countries' governments, and that's what it wants. But it faces an obstacle, and the obstacle is Iran. Where does this hatred and venom come from? With respect to the United States, it's very simple. In 1953, Iran was a parliamentary democracy. Iran had not invaded or attacked another country for a century and a half. This was a peaceful country. It had been invaded several times, but it was a democracy that didn't threaten anybody, didn't want to threaten anybody, hadn't threatened anybody, hadn't invaded any place actually since the 1790s in a brawl over who controlled Basra. So, in other words, very esoteric things from the 1790s. But since then, Iran had been bothered, but had not bothered anybody else. And in 1953, the Iranian prime minister elected, respected, Prime Minister Mossadegh, had the audacity to say the thing never to be said by this region, which is, I think the oil under our ground is Iranian, not British. And when he uttered that thought that maybe Iran's oil belonged to Iran, immediately the British Empire, in the form of MI6, came to the new ascendant American empire in the guise of the CIA and said, we got to overthrow this guy, which of course they did successfully. They made what today we would call a color revolution. They stirred up protests in the streets. They stirred up unrest, and Mossadegh was chased from power. And the United States installed what the Persian Empire would have called a satrapy, meaning that Iran became a kind of province of the American empire under ultimately CIA rule. And we put the Shah of Iran as the face of that empire, and the police organization Savak as the enforcers of that empire. That lasted 26 years. In 1979, as the Shah of Iran was dying of cancer, the people led a revolution, an uprising, and threw out Savak and the CIA and the Shah. And that's when Iran had its Islamic revolution and put in the government that is government until today. The United States hated that. When you're an empire, as we are, when you have protectorates, when you have places where you have your military, and in the case of Iran, when your major oil companies have investments there that suddenly are lost because what was stolen from Iran is now taken back by Iran, that led to a reputational question. We need to bring Iran back under our control because we're an empire. If we're too weak vis-a-vis any piece of our empire, it damages our reputation anywhere. We need to punish these people for what they've done. And there was the hostage taking by the youth radical groups who said, we're doing this because we want the Shah to be brought back here to face a trial in Iran for the crimes of the police state over the last 23 years. And the United States had taken in the Shah. in a very unwise decision by President Carter in 1979 for medical treatment, knowing that you're suspecting it was going to lead to this kind of eruption. They demanded reparations. They demanded an apology. They demanded an end to the U.S. Subversion of Iran. All pretty reasonable, actually. But of course, it became the cause célèbre of the United States in 1979. And another humiliation for America, which an empire never tolerates. An empire needs to repay any kind of loss of face with some kind of extreme punishment, not only to get that particular recalcitrant place under control, but to signal to all the rest of the empire, don't you dare try this. So from 1980 onward, the U.S. has been at war with Iran in various ways. In 1980 onward, we paid, we armed, we supplied Saddam Hussein to invade Iran. A pretty sordid deal. Saddam Hussein used poison gas with American knowledge at the minimum, and according to some testimonies, American active support. But we engaged in a war in Iran through a proxy, through Iraq, from the very start of this 1979 government. Donald Trump, already back in 1980, said we have to overthrow this government. So when Trump gives his explanations for the current war, he says, oh, nuclear or this or that. These are convenient current explanations for something that has been on his mind for 46 years as well. Because the American empire suffered a slight. A country got out from under American CIA control, which you don't allow to happen. And from 1980, it's been nonstop war. It's been an economic war. What our Treasury Secretary, who I increasingly regard to be a thug, basically, not a Treasury Secretary, but someone who delights and gloats in crushing other economies by using financial means or trade sanctions or financial blockages, and delights in it, explained in Davos this year in a Fox News interview with Maria Bartiromo that our statecraft destroyed the Iranian economy last year. Well, we've been doing that kind of statecraft. What a horrible Orwellian term for destroying another country's economy. We've been doing that for decades. And we have been engaged in assassinations of Iranian leaders. We have been engaged in blowing up their nuclear facilities, even when they have been pleading, let's have an agreement that puts us under strict supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency. We've been using what's called hybrid warfare, every possible means of subversion, of economic warfare, of direct military action, of covert operations. Donald Trump confirmed that in the protests last year, the U.S. sent weapons to the protesters. That's not a protest. That's an insurrection we were creating that did not work. But the point I'm making is that we portray Iran as evil because it did something unacceptable to the United States that doesn't involve nuclear weapons or any of the specific issues or Hezbollah or Hamas. It goes back to 1979. They escaped from the American empire. They escaped from CIA control. That's not allowed. That's simply what you're not supposed to do. And this war has been going on with various pretexts, various explanations since then.
Thanks for watching. You can go to tuckercarlson.com for our entire library of everything we've done, and we hope you will.